So we're going to explore Mech Commander, the Hetzer, looking at some of the lighter tanks, lighter vehicles that you can use to augment your mechs, because it's not just about the mechs. They've got the spotlight, but in terms of force multiplication, other things you could bring to the table, and battle value, we do want to keep in mind some of the tanks that are out there. So if you've been following my channel, you know one of the philosophies is big guns never tire. You can have your fancy plans, you can have your tactics, you can have your interlocking lances, you're going to do everything correct. I get up there with a bunch of autocannon 20s and I start rolling dice. That's going to affect your breathing a little bit. That's going to kind of get your attention here. You're going to bug out a little bit. I mean, I bug out. So I'm very interested as a mech commander. If we're looking at Inner Sphere, I don't even know the clans. They don't exist yet. Autocannon 20s. Yeah. But there's a lot to it. No one's just going to let me roll up there. You're going to do a lot to stop it. And the balance out is not only do you have to get up there, you got to get point blank. You got to get like one hex away and blast away. But man, that is a lot of fun. So if we're looking at some ways to get autocannon 20s on the table in a cheap capacity, this tank does it. But there are tons and tons and tons of drawbacks. And I do have a few in my collection, and we're building that checklist. But I would say it's very situational. It's a lot like the short-range missile carrier. If you look at the short-range missile carrier, at first glance, you're like, well, there's a mistake on the battle sheet, the tech sheet, because it's just got so many short-range missiles. But you've got to get up point blank. It doesn't have a lot of armor. It's high battle value. There's a lot of what-ifs to pull it into position. The Hetzer's the same thing, but the offset is the battle value is really, really low. So let's explore this. I feel like it's very much like A-Team back in the day. Somebody had a bunch of these vehicle chassis, and they're like, let's give it some sloped armor. Let's slap on some wheels and just put an autocannon 20 in the front. It's basically like a seat strapped on with an autocannon 20. Armor, nothing to write home about. Not bad, not great, but compared to other vehicles in the weight class, it's a little bit under-armored, but that's because you've got the autocannon 20. Autocannon 20 is in that forward arc. There's no turret. There's no turret on this thing. I mean, in the game, it probably moves a little bit much like a World War II tank, but there's no turret. Your turret is the movement. It's wheeled. So now you're looking and you're saying, well, this is a wheeled vehicle, so motive hits are a little bit more deadly for it. Maybe it would have been better off as a tracked vehicle from that perspective. So what this means is really you have to use this in two ways. The first is a swarm type tactic where you could take 2 or 4, and for the battle value, it's around 576, 5 something. You could put down 4 in a nice size game. You could easily put down 2. So battle value for what you get is very, very good. But you're going to need redundancy. And the way that it's going to work, I find, you don't have the armor, you're exposed to motives. It's either defensive or pulling in the opponent. This idea of charging out and engaging, you're not going to last long. Now, obviously, for some crazy reason, you got 3D printing and you're going to print out like 20 of these things and it's just a scenario. I mean, there's a famous, in the tech manual, what sold it was the fact that they were able to swarm certain mechs and just blast it apart. I mean, you know the saying, right? Quantity has its own quality. So if you can do that, yes, but that's going to take up all your battle value. That's all you're going to have. That's just a crazy scenario. You're playing one of those things. Don't go out. Fritz isn't telling you to go out and buy like 20 of these things. Although you can go out and buy 2 Karnovs and 4 warriors right now and some infantry. But in exploring this tank, defensively, it's pretty tough. In that if you can hide back in some buildings, if you could hide back behind some terrain and your opponent has to pass by, it's just a really cheap AC-20 ambush. And again, if you have 2 working as a pair, it has the redundancy. And if you can lead against a main mech, it's going to have a hard time engaging both. The other effective tactic to using this, and this is what we're exploring here in this splash screen, it was a mission where a Krita operative was discovered, trying to make it to the spaceport, make it off planet. Davian was going into capture. My Merc company was going into capture. So this little setup here with the tanks and the hovers had its own in-game AI. Every turn it advanced, and if it made it off the table to the spaceport, we both lost. This is a great example. Putting those tanks in as bodyguard tanks, you couldn't risk. Now, there are some specific conditions that we're looking at, but in this mission, we couldn't risk shooting in that area simply because we didn't want to damage the operative. And we had to run close to the operative. You had to get up there and literally stop the vehicle and send in some infantry and grab and go. So within that rule set, if there's a way that your opponent is forced to move to a certain position, capture the spaceport, grab this zone, or even just as backfield guardians, cheap backfield guards. You've got 2 LRM-20 carriers or 3 LRM-20 carriers, and they're sitting behind a building, and they're just indirecting the whole turn, the whole game. And your opponent's like, look, I can't have 6, 60, 60, 60, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20 missiles real time firing me every single turn. I can't do that. So I've got to send some mechs to get back there. Well, having 2 tanks guarding, right? The opponent is coming to you. You are not going out towards them. In that capacity, for the battle value, it's just a great cheap way to get some points on the table. So in terms of your collection, I would say, yeah, if you picked up 2, I guess I am giving you permission to pick up 2. If you pick up 2, you'll use them. You'll have some fun, but they're situational. Unless, and we all have our favorite Battletech units. There are right now out there, someone's like, Fritz, I got 10. I play 10 every game. And, I'm right there with you. I've got some units that just are very specialized, or units that for whatever reason I enjoy playing. And if you look at my collection, you're like, that's madness. Why does this guy have so many of these? That is going to exist in Battletech, that exists in any type of game. And maybe you go in that direction. But it offers something in a very, very specific situation. So it comes down to tactically, are you playing a mission where that favors it? Or if you're going to play these tanks, can you recreate that? Can you recreate that on the table?